All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Sulushini. Welcome to the Pixel Project Read for Pixel Google Hangout session, the second one in support of the celebrity male role model Pixel Reveal campaign. To find out more about the Pixel Reveal campaign to end violence against women, please visit reveal.thepixelproject.net. Today we have a very special treat for you, a live reading session and Q&A session by Ellen Hopkins. Please join me in welcoming Ellen. She is the New York Times best-selling author of Crank, Burnt, Impulse, Glass, Identical Tricks, Fallout, Perfect, Triangles, Tilt, and Collateral. She has just released Rumble, a young adult novel that deals with controversial issues of homosexuality, religion, and suicide, among others. Thank you, Ellen, and welcome, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here and being able to say hi to everybody way out there and to talk about some really important issues that are really, everybody's life, everybody needs to think about the issues we're going to talk about because they touch lives around us, and we need to keep an eye on those issues. So.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Because as you know, and since you support the campaign, we really feel that these are issues that not a lot of people want to talk about, and a lot of them think, well, it's not happening to me, so it's not my problem. But what we're trying to point out is that it could happen to you. It could happen to anybody. And the whole point of fighting these issues is that it doesn't matter if it's happening to somebody you don't know. It's not right. It's a human rights issue, and it needs to be stopped. And the best way to do it is to actually confront it head on and do something about it.
Right, and I think that's one thing that we forget, that, up until just recently, really, women and children who have been facing abuse or sexual abuse have been told to shut up. And so all that did was perpetuate violence against women, and so by stepping up into the light and shedding a light on that subject, that's how we change it. That's how we turn things around. That's how we move forward into a better future for our daughters and our children.
Yes, I agree completely, and we are so thankful that you are on board with us and you're actually going to do a live reading session. I will let you introduce your session now, and you can just talk about it, and then we can segue straight into the live reading, which I'm very excited about.
Sure. I guess we're talking about my new book is Rumble, which came out just 10 days ago, and it's not those exact issues, but it's also subject matter that we didn't talk about for a long time, which was bullying and suicide and what it means to be a gay young person in this country and others, really around the world. And so by talking about how it can, the good parts and the bad parts, I think we've come to an understanding of people in general, whether we're gay or whether we're not gay or whether whatever. So I think it's important that people like me write books representing that, and that everybody reads books and discusses them, because that's the biggest part of the
exactly.
We need to talk about it. So, and I do hope parents read my books with their kids and discuss the things I write about with their kids, so that parents develop the understanding and the kids develop. So, Rumble, which is about an atheist boy who's in love with an evangelical Christian girl, which that sets up some conflict, obviously. But the driving conflict is that some of her friends have bullied his little brother, who is gay, into suicide. And Matt carries guilt because he was with her at the time and might have been able to stop his little brother. And how do you find forgiveness from somebody who's gone? So that's some big questions I'm asking in this book, and I hope readers people ask themselves the big questions in a way with some understanding.
Yeah.
By reading.
Right.
So, are we ready to read?
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
All right. So, and this is the book. I think you guys have all probably seen the cover, and it's like the most beautiful cover ever.
Oh, yes.
All right. So this is Rumble. In the narrow pewter space between the gray of consciousness and the obsidian where dreams ebb and flow, there is a wishbone window, and trapped in its glass a single silver shard of enlightenment. It is this mystics search for, the truth of the Holy Grail. It is this believers pray for, the spark, Alpha and Omega. It is this the gilded claim to hold in the cups of their hands. But what of those who plunge into slumber, who snap from sleep's embrace? What of those who measure their tomorrows with finite numbers, cross them off their calendars one by one? Some say death is a doorway, belief the key. Others claim you only have to stumble across the threshold to glimpse 100 billion universes in the blink of a single silver shard. Have faith. That's what people keep telling me. Faith that things will get better. Faith that bad things happen for a reason. Implicit in that ridiculous statement is the hand of some extraterrestrial magician, some all-powerful creator, which, if his faith will want to be totally frank about it, would also make him, her, it an omnipotent destroyer. Because if some God carefully sows each seed of life, he is also flint for the relentless sun beating down upon his crops until they wither into dust, zygotes to ashes, or some other poignant phrase. And why would any of that make someone feel better about snuffing out? The end result is the same. You get a few years on this sad, evolving planet. If you're lucky, you experience love, some one or two or three to gentle your time, fill the hollow spaces. If you're really fortunate, the good outweighs the bad. In my 18 years, all I've seen is shit to beat the scales. Case in point, I've been abruptly summoned to the front of the classroom at the urgent request of my English teacher, the oh-so-disturbed Savannah Bell wannabe, Ms. Hannity, emphasis on the Ms. She pretends sympathy for what, I've no clue, and like she gives half a damn about anything but clinging iron-fisted to her job. Mr. Turner, Big South taints her voice, and her eyes, no doubt she described them as cornflower, are wide with mock concern. Would you please come here for a minute? I think she thinks she's whispering, but 27 pairs of eyes home in on me. I straight on laser everyone until they drop like dead fly duos. Yes, ma'am. The feigned respect isn't lost on her, and she doesn't bother to lower her voice. Mr. Carpenter wishes a word with you. Please see him now, and the rest of y'all get back to work. This doesn't concern you. Why, then, did she make it exactly everyone's concern? The ends of my fingers tingle, and my jaw keeps working itself forward, backward, forward. I force it sideways, and audibly, painfully, it pops. For some messed up reason, she smiles at that. I really want to slap that stinking grin off her face. But then I'd get expelled, and that would humiliate my father, everyone's favorite science teacher, not to mention the coach of the best basketball team the school has seen in a dozen years. Then Mom would bitch at him for not kicking my ass, and at me for turning him into such a wuss, until I had no choice but to flee from our miserable, termite-ridden shack, and I'd have to live in my fume-sucking truck, eating pilfered ramen, drinking Mosby Creek water until I got the run so bad I'd wind up in the ER, hoping Dad hadn't had time to dump me from his insurance. And despite all that, Miss Nose-Up-My-Ass Hannity would still be a rip-roaring bitch. There. So that's the beginning of Rumble. The young man in here, Matt, he's very much inspired by my teenage son, who's here at home now, 17 years old. The voice is very much snarky like his. But the biggest part of that is that when my son was 15, he had his first girlfriend, like the first real love of his life. And he was so smitten. I mean, he loved her so much. He was crazy. Like, one time I was in the kitchen, and he and a friend were in the living room talking, and the girl wasn't there, so the friend says, well, you know, she's not around, they're on a trip, so you could just like go find another girl for, you know, in the meantime. And Orion says, you don't understand. That's not how you treat a lady. And I'm like, yes, I did something right. Yeah. So then her father, and she happened to be an older woman of 17, her stepfather, who was an evangelical Christian, but the kind that carries like AK-15s, you know, like a gun-toting Christian, he made them break up because Orion, who wants to be a rock star, and he was a very talented guitar player, but he wears like Megadeth or AC/DC T-shirts, and so the stepfather thought that he was in league with the devil, so he made him break up, and Orion was crushed for 6 months because he lost this girl who he loved, and we assume always that young women are going to love stronger than men, and that's not always the case. Young men can love as deeply and respectfully as women do, and I think we need to remember that. So this is a tribute in a way to that experience and to my son, and yeah, so that's where this character, because people always ask, where do characters come from, you know, and something inspires them almost always, and this one just popped out of my head fully formed, you know, and there he is. So.
Oh, that's actually a really very beautiful tribute. Actually, I'm sure your son's very proud that, you know.
I'm not sure he knows yet, but he's going to know now, isn't he?
He's going to know now for sure. So what we can do now is we're just going to quickly just kind of go through some questions that from the Pixel project.
Okay.
Like we discussed. Maybe first we'll just start off with, this is a personal question from me. You don't actually usually come across a lot of authors who write in verse, you know, for books. What is the main, like, how did you arrive at that decision to write in verse?
I've been a poet, pretty much writing poetry since I was a little kid, publishing through high school and into college in lit magazines, growing my poetry as a member of a poetry group, so that's something that's always been here for me. Crank, which is my first novel, 10 years old next month. I can't believe it's been 10 years, except for, I have 13 books in 10 years, so maybe I can believe it, but that one, which I think pretty much everybody out there understands, was inspired by my daughter's story of meth addiction. And so starting the book, I needed some understanding of the decisions she made. So I wanted to get inside her head and write from her point of view. I started the book in prose, and the voice was my voice. It was angry and hurt, and it was not her voice. So I put the book away, and I did a workshop with Sonia Sones, who's another verse novelist. And I'm like, oh, poetry, that's the way to tell the story, because verse is, poetry is about how the poet sees the world, views the world. And it was a way to look at her world through her eyes. And then, you know, there's the idea of how her thoughts scattered and be able to scatter words across the page and to kind of do some more highly stylized stuff, especially in the earlier books. And it just worked. And then I discovered like a talent for storytelling that way, and I've been doing it ever since.
Yes, because from what I've seen, I mean, I've read a couple of your books, and I find it, I like reading poetry, but the way you write in verse, it takes you somewhere else. As a reader, we actually feel what you feel or what you're trying to say, and I think that's just amazing, because there's so many books out there and so many writers out there, but to come across someone who's so honest in the way you put your feelings and your thoughts and your emotions down into words, that is what I think drives a person to pick up your book, because
Right.
you can't go away.
No, I think, and the readers that love my books, it feels like you're living the story rather than you're being told the story. I think that's a difference of having a lot of extraneous language on the page compared to just what needs to be there.
Exactly.
And that's the experience. That's my takeaway from it anyway. So.
And pretty much what I think. For me personally, as one of your readers, I can say is exactly what I take away as well. So, thank you for that. Um, we would like to maybe talk about your Crank trilogy for a little while because, like you said, that was actually your first novel, and it was very personal to you. It was inspired by certain things that had happened in your life. If Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what drove you to actually do that?
Yeah, again, it was, first of all, for me personally, to develop some understanding, there was a cathartic element there, obviously, and I think for a lot of young people, I would encourage you to, when you're going through, and we all go through bad experiences in our life, but writing it out helps you put things in order in your own mind. It's cathartic, and it also helps you, like, not stress over it here because it goes out there. Even if you never show it to anybody, but to be able to do that. Um, and I wanted to write it, and I was not writing teen at the time at all. I didn't even know I was going to write young adult literature until this story happened. And then I knew I had to tell it to teens because if I could turn one, and I know I've turned many, many more than one, away from that path, by really showing you how fast it can grab hold of you, the nature of the addiction, and what happens to your dreams, which is really the drug steals your dreams away. That if I could turn young people off that path, I was determined to do that. It's also one of the reasons I stand up so, devoutly in favor of a teens' right to read and First Amendment. I'm a First Amendment champion and keeping books on bookshelves instead of yanking them off because of, it's got a bad word in it or it's got something that makes you uncomfortable in it. It's not a reason to yank them off the bookshelves because there are readers out there that need these books.
Right. Okay. From there, we just like to quickly touch upon your history as well. I mean, you've been quite open about the fact that you are a survivor of domestic violence, and that has played a large part in you becoming who you are today, and with your history in your life. Uh, Wondering if you'd be comfortable, or would you like to talk about what how you actually got out of that and how you actually survived what happened to you.
Right, and it was about 4 years. So first of all, I'd like to say, ladies, or it's not always men who are the abusers, but most often it is ladies or boys, men living this. Don't stay there. Don't stay. It's so important that you get out as soon as you can because it's not going to get better. And we think we can fix them or fix the relationship, and you can't. So for me, it was 4 years. It was physical abuse as far as like punching me in the face, and I ended up losing teeth because of it, and I had my nose broken because of it. So it was real violent abuse, and I did stay after some of that, and only to be abused again. And part of it was even when I was pregnant with his, he was dragging me around when I was pregnant. He knocked me in the walls when I was pregnant, and I still stayed because I thought I could fix it. I thought the baby needed her father. All those kind of excuses that I think survivors that victims of violence think. And I think we kind of think maybe we are unworthy of something better sometimes. I hate to say it, but sometimes I think people actually think that they deserve it on some level for whatever reasons. And a lot of that stuff is because it's generational. It's something you see in your own lifetime. Maybe your mother's been through it and she stayed, and so you think, well, that's what it is. That is not what a relationship is supposed to be about. Absolutely not. So, and I'm happy to discuss that because, again, it's important, first of all, that we remember that it happens, and it happens to people you might not assume it happens to, and that it's important to get out, to tell somebody. You don't put up with it. You don't stay the extra day thinking you're going to make it better tomorrow. Leave right away.
Yeah. And I find that that is actually something that I think a lot of people who are in that situation tend to feel that along with the emotional and physical abuse, there's also the psychological abuse that for women we tend to have that ingrained, like, you know, you have to be a certain way, you have to do this a certain way. And when you are put in that situation, you tend to blame yourself instead of the person who's actually doing it. And you know, nobody's forcing him to raise his hands to you.
Right.
Nobody's forcing him to kick you. And like you said, you were pregnant during that time, at a point in your life when you were supposed to be taken care of. You were carrying a child. You were being abused, but somehow at the back of your mind, you stayed, and you thought, well, you know, it will get better, and maybe subconsciously, maybe I did something wrong.
Right. And I think that's what I hear a lot, because I do talk to young people every day. You know, socially, either when I'm doing school visits or you know, I have a heavy social networking presence. I get a lot of messages, a lot of, you know, emails from young women specifically who are there, and they do on some level believe that they did something wrong, so they deserved that. And you know, I just in fact had an argument. We just had an argument. Sometimes I argue on my Facebook page, on my personal page. So if you, I mean, I have fan pages over there, but if you come to my personal Facebook page, you will get a real clear view of who I am and what I stand for. And we had a big argument about that, about feminism and equality, and women. You know, my opinion is women, gay people, we should all have equal rights. You know, it's an equal rights issue to me. And, you know, so I had a snarky young man say, okay, well, I guess that means if they hit me, I can hit them back. You know, and it's not all right for a woman to hit a man either, but it's not, you know, no, I mean, that's just, it was such a weird comment, and it was given so cavalierly by this, I mean, he was probably, I don't know, he was a teen, and he kind of felt like he had the right, and I'm like, no, you know what, you don't have the right to hit anybody, let alone a woman.
Nobody has the right to hit anybody.
No.
And that's another thing. I mean, right now we're talking about, well, we're hoping for the rise of feminism, and the whole concept of feminism does have some stereotypical um, thoughts attached to it. You know, when you say a feminist, you think a woman who burns a bra, and you know, who's really aggressive, but it's not just about that. A feminist is somebody who just believes that every woman should be equal to every man, and that's about it. And do you come across things like that? Like you pointed out, you know, if she hits me, I can hit her back. When you do your readings, when you have conversations, does that come up a lot?
It does. I mean, and the discussion of what feminine. I just did a live journal blog about it, in fact, and you know, it's women across. You look at how women are treated. I mean, we have to look at this as a global problem. You know, globally, it's a huge problem. I mean, women are still being mutilated and gang raped and then hung after that in a public square. And I mean, these things happen, and we are, you know, we have to consider this as sisterhood in a way. I mean, men need to be feminists too. It's not just about women being feminists. Men need to support it too. But we have, you know, that is something we need to change globally. I mean, women should not be subjugated. You know, they're not owned. You know, and in way too many places they are still owned, including there are places in this country where men think they own their women, and that's
Wrong on so many levels.
so no. So I mean, you should be partners. You know, a relationship is a partnership. It's not an ownership on either side. You know, so it's a mindset that we have to keep working on. You know, this whole idea that women who are raped and they're afraid to step forward because well, people are not going to believe it. They're going to call me a liar. They're going to, you know, and it goes that way. It's discussion on. You see it in the news every day on college campuses that women are afraid to confront their rapists, or even even to go to law enforcement, because sometimes law enforcement is not supportive. So this is we change this with our children. I think you were talking about Joe Hill yesterday, saying that he supports this project because he wants his sons to grow up respecting women. And I'm kind of the same way. You know, we're raising we just took guardianship several months ago of our young grandchildren. So I have boys in the house. I have 17, 10, and 5 in the house. And the 2 younger ones, I'm very clear that, I make Clyde at the bus stop. He has to let the girls on the bus first, and it's just a matter of respecting that. Yeah. So, and that's been an adjustment because he always wants to get on the bus first.
Okay, I just want to let everyone know that we'll be opening up the Q&A session very soon. So if you want to ask Ellen questions like I'm doing, then you can actually just go to the Q&A app, which is now on the Google event page, and access it. You will need to log in with your Google account, then click on the screen to see it pop up with the Q&A space on the right. Then you can type in your questions there. And those who are on YouTube, you can also leave your questions in the comment section. Just to let you know, we're going to start that soon. But I still have a couple more questions for Ellen.
Okay.
Ellen, before we move on, I just want to know, aside from, everything we've talked about, we talked about women being raped, and the whole college campus thing is something that I think has been getting a lot of press internationally. How the girl got drunk and was raped by a group of athletes, if I'm not mistaken, and how she was shunned because these were boys with a bright future. Like, what about the girl?
Right.
About a year and plus ago, they had some national games in Malaysia where one of the ladies who were on, she wasn't actually an athlete, but I think she was a chaperone or something. She was raped by a group of athletic boys, and again, that case came out to the press, came out to the media, but it was made to go away because, again, these were people who had very bright futures, and this is something that we see happening across the globe, not just in a specific country. You've got issues like honor killing, where a girl who wants to further educate her studies or who wants the choice to marry the person that she loves is killed by a male family member, and sometimes is supported by the killing is supported by a mother or a sister, because they are so in their traditions and culture is so ingrained. They're more worried about honor than life. These are some of the issues that I think we really, in the Pixel project, and I think you with your work, we try to address, because, like you said, everybody needs to be able to be given the choice to choose. Everybody has that fundamental human right to be equal. And one of the most popular questions I think women hear when they talk about a rape, or when they report a rape, or even talk about sexual harassment is, what were you wearing?
Right. What were you wearing? Were you drinking? Did you put yourself in a spot where to make this happen? So it's victim blaming all the way. I mean, it's like no one chooses to be victimized. It's that. I mean, let's look at the definition of the word victim. If you're victimized, it's not because of something you did, and it's interesting to me. It's something that I discuss this a lot too, and I do think women need to be smart. I'm not saying that, but I don't think, the idea that, well, she was drinking, so of course, she deserved it or whatever. It's like all of us make mistakes. All of us do things that that we go. I have once in a while in my life maybe had a little too much to drink, probably, but that didn't mean that I deserved to be raped because that. So I mean, again, it's changing the mindset, and we start with our youth. And hopefully, I mean, I see such a change in kind of this generation of teens now. I mean, they're a lot more open-minded about so many things, but that's one thing actually where they're a little bit kind of behind on thinking about.
Yeah.
Religion has something to do with that sometimes, but that's not an excuse either. It's not. I mean, I don't think God is going to be like saying, yeah, well, she deserved it, so yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm pretty sure God would be going, I don't think you're supposed to be doing that, So,
Exactly.
it is changing, but it's pretty slowly. It's changing too slowly, I think. I think we should be smarter by now. We should have more respect for each other by now. And again, up until really the 70s, I don't think women were allowed to talk about being abused, or maybe even later, So.
In certain cultures, it's still considered a norm. It's like, all right, that's how it happens.
Right.
But again, I think there is a movement of younger people stepping up and standing up for what's right. And I think there've been some videos on YouTube about how you treat a girl when she's drunk,
Right.
and how not to treat a girl when she's drunk, or basically just how to treat a girl. And those videos are the ones that give you hope, because you're like, okay, there are people out there who are not in the movement, who just feel, hey, you know what? What's happening here is not right, and we should fix it. We should make it right. And that's we're thankful for people like that, I think, in the world.
Well, and it's obviously not every man. Most men are certainly respectful of each other and women and children, and but they're just those, and I don't know. I mean, I hate to say, because you mentioned sports, and those guys that kind of feel like they're really it's okay to overpower a woman or another person, and the violence doesn't necessarily have to be against women with some of that either. It's a way to feel better than, or stronger than, or somehow superior to other people, and that's the mindset we have to change too.
Okay, so we're going to open up the Q&A session now. So be prepared for questions, Ellen.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so we have a number of people already leaving questions. So I will tell you some of the really fun ones.
Okay.
This is from Sarah Onley, who said, Ellen, you're such an inspiration. I love you.
Oh.
Following. And then you've got Jessica Johnson saying, not a question. Sorry, Jessica question. Yeah, not a question, but just have to say I heart you, Ellen.
How much love I get around the guys that are like, oh.
And then there's another one. I think this is right after your reading of Rumble, by Kristen Brienne. That was amazing, Ellen. You're my favorite author.
Oh, thank you. I do like to read, because people don't, when they read, they don't always hear my voice as maybe the way that I hear it. So when I read, I think it allows you to hear how I hear it in my head. So it's fun to do that.
Okay, so there's a question here which I think I've already asked. So Cameron, you've asked Ellen what made her decide to write in verse as opposed to writing normally. So Ellen, you actually already kind of answered that question. So.
Well, and I do like making every word count. There's a challenge to writing in verse. I just finished my first novel in prose, which will be out next June. And it was, for me, a much easier process to bring it back into prose, as far as getting a lot of words down much more quickly, because writing in verse is a very exacting skill. It's every word has to count, imagery is important. So that's a challenge for me, and I enjoy doing that too, which is why I keep doing it, I guess.
All right, so here's another question by Sarah Onley. She's asked, what made you decide to start writing adult books?
He was actually my children's publisher, so YA is on the children's side, and he said, I think you should write an adult novel, and in fact, I have the right imprint for you at S&S, and so I thought about it. The idea, so Triangles, which was my first adult novel, the idea for that book, it's about midlife crises, the idea for that came from a teen boy reader. So he's like, you have to write midlife crises, and I'm like, wow, what's going on in your house, right? So, and I had friends that kind of hit that 40-ish, 45-ish birthdays, and they were readjusting their lives at the time I was thinking about this. So they inspired a couple of the characters, and the idea that, you do kind of hit a point in your life where you start going, well, what if I would have gone that way instead, right? Or what if should I do something different now? What if I'm really bored? It's just, I think we all hit that place in our lives where we start reassessing where we've been and where we want to go in the future. So adult novels allow you to do that. They're much more reflective. That's a difference between, I think, adult and YA is adult is a lot more reflection because we have lived so long. YA is all about what's going to be, exploration, probably exploration versus reflection.
Following that, I just wanted to just touch on the female characters you have in your books. You've got, in Triangles alone, you've got 3 women who are at the same stage of their lives, but who are doing all 3 of them are doing such different things. And then you've got in your YA books, books like Crank, where you're looking at your main female character, Christina, and what she's doing with her life. So could we just talk a little bit about how you envision the female characters from your young adult novels and your adult novels, how that comes about?
Right, and first of all, the pre-write for me, so pre-writing every book is all about character building. Yeah. My books are totally character-driven. They're not plot-driven. In fact, I don't know if I actually have plots in a lot of them. I just feel like it's my characters telling me their stories. So the women, they're inspired by women in my life. They're inspired by women I meet, young women that I meet, and it's often an offhand remark. It's watching somebody I know grow, or perhaps go through something very sad in their life, or some joyous event in their life, and that all is, I don't know, it's just encapsulated. I try to encapsulate those emotions, and people are emotion. That's what we are, and to be able to bring real emotion into those characters and breathe life into them. That's for me. That's the fun part of what I do. Is that character building stuff.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Okay, we have a question by Kayla, which I think is a bit of a serious question. She'd like to know what advice you'd give to combat low self-esteem or depression.
Don't keep it to yourself. I think we have these things about ourselves that we recognize as being something that we need help with, but we tend to either be embarrassed or think we can fix them ourselves. And I think, even if it's just sharing it with a friend or bringing, it's important, especially if it's something like depression, that it's rarely something you're going to fix on your own. You're going to need some kind of help to do that, whether it's situational, which is just, the depression that's around something bad that happens in your life, or clinical, which is the brain chemistry side. Fixing those things by yourself, that's kind of what leads you to that brink of making the decision to do something, self-harm in some way. So it's important to talk to somebody, I think, right away. A friend, a relative, a teacher, librarian, somebody that can help.
Okay. I think that's really good advice, because a lot of times when people are depressed, when you're sick, you see a doctor. But because depression is something that cannot be diagnosed by taking your blood or checking your temperature, a lot of people don't talk about it. And I think there's also that social stigma about keeping that quiet, keeping it to yourself, because depression's not really a medical illness, but that's wrong, because clinical depression is diagnosed is a diagnosed disease, and you need to say something about it.
Now, and one thing I learned in researching Rumble is, not every kid who's bullied commits suicide, but enough of them do. And what the common thread in all that is depression. So it's the kids who are going through depression, clinical depression usually, so the brain chemistry side, who end up committing suicide because that's kind of what their brain's telling them to do. And so that is something that you need to keep an eye on as a parent or as a friend. You can see signs, and there are signs that you can find, grade slipping, kind of like not wanting to get up in the morning. There are symptoms that you can see, and it's important to be proactive on the other side as well, instead of just waiting for something to happen.
I hope that helps you, Kayla. We move on to the next question with Kristen asking if did you always want to be an author, or did you envision yourself as something else?
When I was little, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. Because I like to argue. I don't know. So, and then I was an entrepreneur. So I was a young business person, and I've had one job in my life, and working for somebody else was not something I enjoyed. So I immediately was drawn toward entrepreneurship. Writing was something I've been doing forever, and so it was in the back of my mind that I could be a writer, a professional writer. But then I got married young, I had children young, I had businesses young, and so I took this big, giant, long, wide detour away from my writing. I mean, I was always writing, but I was like yellow legal pads and hiding what I was writing in the drawers, and nobody ever saw it. But that part of the writing was all very personal. And then when I met my current husband and we moved to Tahoe, I had sold my businesses, and it was like, okay, what am I going to, I'm a writer, right? So I'm going to be a writer. And so I made a very conscious decision to be a writer about age 29. And I went into freelance journalism first, and from there into children's nonfiction. And I don't know if everybody knows, but I published 20 nonfiction books for young readers before I published a novel. And I was writing picture books, and that's not my skill set, but I was trying it. But always wanting to, so writing's always been important to me.
And I'm sure I speak for everybody that we're very thankful that that's what you chose to do.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Okay, so the next question we've got a couple of questions from Cameron. I think he really wants to know a lot of things about you. Great, Cameron, keep the questions coming. Cameron said he loved all of your books. Is there ever going to be a sequel to Tricks?
I'm writing this Trick sequel right now. So Traffic will be the 2015 YA, and I'm in the middle of, I'm about halfway done with it right now. So yes, there will be, and it will be this coming year, in fact. So the next adult novel, it's called Tangled Now. That title might change. The one in prose, that will be out in like June, and then end of August, early September, we'll have the next YA, which is so, and it goes very much in depth with child sexual exploitation, child sex exploitation, and you really will get a lot of, all 5 characters are still there, but you're going to get a lot of other stories through the people that they are working with and meeting in the programs that they have pulled into, trying to get themselves out of where they're at.
Okay, Cameron, I hope you're all ready for the next book to come out then. And Cameron also wants to know what your favorite book is.
My favorite book, or favorite one of my books? My favorite one of my books is actually Rumble, but for a number of reasons. My favorite book ever, I mean, I kind of have to go to authors rather than books, because I was like, I'm one of those people that reads everything an author writes. Yeah, so historically, Stephen King, Ken Kesey, who wrote One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, and John Irving, kind of, these kind of very quirky, character-driven authors. Those are what I like. That's probably why I write that stuff too, because
Well, Cameron has responded to your answer on the tricks question, and he said, Cameron says, "I am so happy for the sequel," and there's like a ton of exclamation marks, or and then another bunch of exclamation marks. Can you
yeah.
tell if Cameron's excited? So, there's one question I've been wanting to ask, and is the importance of having strong female characters in media, in storytelling, in basically anything. Because when you read a book, or you watch a movie, or follow a series, or anything, you learn a lot of things from your characters, from the people in the books, the characters in the books. And so, what are your thoughts on the importance of having strong female characters, or at least respected female characters?
Right, and I think it's interesting because I would say most of my female characters are strong female characters. I mean, they're not all out, doing Hunger Games kind of strong female character stuff. But sometimes being a strong woman isn't about the physicality of it. It's about the mentality, and that could even be allowing yourself to be a survivor, standing up as a survivor. So that inner strength is what I think really shines through with most of my female characters. And it's, I sometimes they just pop up. Like in Rumble, there was one that she just popped up, and she really is strong, and the second one is not so strong. But I think it's also important to represent both and to show the good and bad of both. Because you can be taken down for being strong, as well. And so you need to see kind of the good and bad of being a passive woman or of being a strong woman, and assertive women. Well, there are people that don't like assertive women. They have unfriended my Facebook page. I just say that. But, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm a solid Aries. I'm a fire sign, and there's no doubt about it. But I think, like, my mom was a more passive woman. She because my dad was very strong-willed, and I did witness some abuse there. It was more on the psychological end, from my dad to my mom. So I think maybe just watching that acceptance rather than like watching a way out of it or seeing a way out of it was a bad example for me, and maybe that's part of the reason I stayed in the abusive relationship as long as I did, because that was the example I saw. And then later when I'm like, what was I thinking? Now I'm like, no!
I'm sorry, but I see your cat at the back, and I think he or she wants to come in.
I think they want dinner. I got a dog out there. She's flopping around.
Okay.
It's almost dinner time.
I saw your cat sitting there and just like looking in very soulfully. I locked my door because my cats are not allowed in the room and I'm on the computer.
Right.
Which brings me to, okay, we've got 5 minutes left, so room for maybe one more question. But there are some comments here that I think you really like to hear, Ellen. Christian Brienne, she has also said that she's really excited for your next book, but she hates that these have to be topics, but she loves that you write about them so openly, because so many people refuse to talk about it, and we all agree on that. I mean, I think these are issues that need to be addressed, and addressed as young as possible. Cameron has responded and said that you are such an inspiration. And Sarah has said that her favorite book of yours is Impulse.
That remains a favorite book for a lot of people. It's because those three characters, everybody goes through bad times. I mean, it's how you respond, that negative external stimuli that makes you who you are. And so I think there are a lot of people who have been through similar situations as one of those or all three of those young people, and again, that was another book that I had to write the end to be representationally correct. And so, the people that hate the way the book ended, it's because that's how it had to end for him. And knowing what I know about the characters, the stuff they were going through, and and the statistic is that 1 in 3 men who attempt suicide and fail go back and get it right. And so and again, there's another statistic that hopefully we can turn around by really understanding what's at stake, and to be able to show young people that there is a way, that there's light past that moment, that dark moment, that we're all there sometimes. Most of us can make it past, but not everybody can. And to understand that is often triggered here in the brain chemistry, it helps us understand ourselves too.
Yeah. We have one last comment from Kristen. She said, I just wanted to let you know that since a lot of conversation is surrounding the topic, that your novels were the reason I took the initiative in my life to get help. I remember reading Impulse almost 5 years ago, and it changed my life for the better.
That's why I do what I do. I love my readers. I really do. I have so much respect for this generation because because they want to stand up and make a difference, but it's not always easy to do that. And I have so much respect and love for this generation. I really do.
Okay, Cameron. No more questions, but Cameron just said, I wish the online video reading never has to end. I just loved listening to Ellen talk. So I have one last question. Ellen, why do you support the Pixel Project?
Because it's a spotlight. It's a spotlight on something that we need. We need to keep working on. It's not going to happen overnight. And without projects like this, it's easy enough to push it back into a dark corner again. We bring the issue out into the light. It's domestic abuse and violence and against women and children. And it's not just women and children, but that's where the spotlight is, because that tends to be where we see it the most. We need to remember that it's here. We need to look for ways to help, and we have to change the future. We have to change. We don't want this in the future. And so, what you guys are doing, of course I'm going to support it, because there was not this kind of support for victims in the past. And so the more we can support, the more we can change the future, the better the whole planet's going to be, So thank you. Kudos to you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ellen. So for those of you who are interested to support the Pixel Project and get your hands on some really cool stuff that Ellen has so generously shared with the Pixel Project, head over to Indiegogo. It's a crowdfunding platform where right now we're doing our Read for Pixels and raise money for that. So you can head over to you can see that http is.gd/r4p Indiegogo, and if you are PayPal donors and Drabble lovers, you can head over to is.gd/r4p Rezu. And to find out more about Read for Pixels and what it's all about, you can head over to is.gd/readforpixels 2014. Ellen has very generously shared with us 5 autographed copies of Rumble. So it's going for, there are 5 there, so $25 to whatever amount you want to pay. Just have to head over to Indiegogo to purchase. And Ellen is also sharing a handwritten poem that she wrote for 250 USD. So just head over to the Indiegogo page to find out more and to purchase it, because it's handwritten by Ellen Hopkins. Come on. And Ellen, again, thank you so much for putting the time and sharing your stories and your time with us, because this is something we really appreciate, and the fact that you are somebody who who support not just supports the cause but who has been there with you're a survivor. I think that makes it all the more special and important, because we want people to know that they have places to talk to, they have people they can go to, and that the Pixar project and what we're doing is to help anybody in that situation come out of it, you know. And I think you sharing your experiences has just been so wonderful. So thank you so much for that. And before we go, I'm just going to show you, everybody here, a little screen share of what exactly the Pixar project does, and you can actually head over to our website for more information. But I'm going to show you this one first as soon as I can open it up. Right, okay. So what the Pixar project's doing is we're going to try to reveal 4 male role models for the, oh, sorry, this one. Let me just open that up for you guys. Don't know why it's not. There you go. Yes. Reveal 4 famous male role models hidden under 1 million pixels. And these pixels are going for just US $1 per pixel. What we're going to do is we're aiming to raise $1 million for the Pixar project and the US-based National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And CADV is one of the most hardworking organizations that works against domestic violence and are tireless about stopping the DV. And we'd like to request that you rally your community to take action together to stop violence against women and girls. So you can head over to thepixelproject.net for more information. Thank you very much. And Ellen, to find out, sorry, thank you very much, Ellen, for sharing our time here. And once again, everybody can just head over to revealthepixelproject.net and please donate, because we're all trying to do the same thing and help everybody. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thanks again, Ellen, for reading Rumble and for just being here. And we'll be having more reading with authors, so please go over to the Pixel Project page to find out more, and have a good day.